This is the shelter we are drawn to and towards through the arches. Welcome to Ostracon, a podcast that translates fragments into the whole from which they came. So today we're talking about Auguste Rodin's The Cathedral. Most everybody's familiar with Rodin. If you're not, you should take the time to learn more about him. He lived from 1840 to 1917, was a sculptor. You can tour his home in Paris. Is considered by many to be the sculptor that introduced the contemporary age. He broke with a lot of classical forms, did things like sculpting a man with a broken nose. It depicted the human body in all kinds of naturalistic, craft-like ways. I've always personally felt with a kind of hyper-humanism, reminiscent of Michelangelo, but brought to contemporary mind in a kind of reachable and tangible way. But you can form your own opinions about his body of work. But suffice it to say, it's extraordinary. And today we're talking about the Cathedral. The Cathedral is a pair of hands. They're crossed at the wrists, reaching upwards and touching one another delicately at the fingertips. So they make a longitudinal shape that is reminiscent of the nave of a cathedral, with a strong vertical sense and a forward-looking portal-like quality, arched above. Except that instead of stone, you have the very natural, very tender flesh forming this shape. And so while it's reminiscent of a cathedral, it is more than a building. You get the sense that the hands are also a sacred space. They form of their palms and fingers this point of focus, this protected point, this point that is leading us on through it towards some kind of development, almost suggesting, if you look at it carefully, a point of birth. And that leads to a reflection on the hands. What are they? To the extent you labor to produce something, you labor with your hands. Whether you write, you make, you bake, you carry a child. The things that you bring into the world, you bring with your hands. If you were to uplift another, or to hurt another, or to hold them back, or to hold them down, these are all actions with the hands. And so Rodin makes this shape, this aspirational shape of the hands, to suggest that the palms of the hands, the things that are done with the hands, the fruit and the work of the hands, not only is itself a sacred thing, suggested of a sacred space, but maybe even makes the sacred space, that the real cathedral is the place that is created out of the work of our hands. It almost suggests the idea of the body of Christ, that the structure is made from human lives, lived with virtue. Lastly, and maybe the most deeply stunning aspect of this work, is that after looking at it for a little while, you realize that the hands cannot come from a single person. They are both right hands, which means that to make this shape, you need two people. And this comes back even deeper to the identity of the human person. It's not just our capacity to do good or evil in the world that we make from it. It's our capacity to do it together. It's our capacity to form this cathedral out of a communion of individuals, of different persons who reach towards one another across their differences and out of the love between them to make a higher order of existence, one that is not lonely, one that is not singular, but two that are made for one another. And so then it's not just the labor of a pair of hands. It's not just the fruit of the work of one, but it's the fruit of the work of two, made one. It's the fruit of the work of us together that is the transformative, that is the transformation of the world, and is the transcendent quality of our life in it. And then this is the cathedral. This is the nave. This cooperation is what builds the sacred space out of the work of our hands and moves us finally beyond communion with one another into communion with the Creator, with the divine. This is the point of birth, of creation. This is the shelter we are drawn to and towards through the arches.